In 1992, a man broke the Central Bank of England.
A unique day in London's financial markets ended with the Chancellor announcing that the pound was being suspended from the ERM and that the second of two dramatic interest rate rises during the day was after all cancelled.
The government has concluded that Britain's best interests are served by suspending our membership of the exchange rate mechanism.
In 1992, a man broke the Bank of England. George Soros is a billionaire investor and a hedge fund manager who is famous for his successful bet against the British pound in 1992, which has been dubbed as breaking the Bank of England. In the early 1990s, George Soros and his hedge fund believed that the British pound was overvalued and the British government would not be able to keep it at its current level. They began to short the pound or bet against it by selling large amount of pounds and buying other currencies such as German mark and the US dollar. Before the single currency euro was introduced in 1999, Europe had another system to manage its currencies. This new system was called Exchange Rate Mechanism, ERM. European countries agreed to link their respective currencies all together at a fixed rate, effectively removing the exchange rate fluctuations. So once a country becomes a part of this exchange rate mechanism, it had to consistently monitor the markets and intervene if their exchange rate started to deviate too much. If too many people were buying the currency, the central bank would start to sell, and if everyone was selling, it would go in and to buy. When the UK joined the exchange rate mechanism, it was already in a recession. Now when an economy is in recession, the central bank, in this case the Bank of England, wants to cut interest rate to prop up the economy. But because of the exchange rate mechanism, it could no longer do that. British pound was already a very weak currency, with the UK's inflation rate being 3 times higher than that of Germany. If the Bank of England cut rates, it would help the British economy, but it would devalue the pound so much that Britain would really have to leave the exchange rate mechanism. Between 1999 and 1992, the British economy suffered. Of course, just keeping interest rate high wasn't enough to maintain the pound's value. So throughout these 2 years, the Bank of England would frequently go to the open market and start buying pounds by the millions, using up its foreign exchange reserve in process. Now, George Soros knew that almost everyone was ready to bet against the British pound, if only there was some sort of bad news that could trigger a stampede big enough to overwhelm the Bank of England. Starting in August 1992, George Soros and his hedge fund began building a short position against the pound. And here is how he did it. He would go to a big bank or another hedge fund and he would borrow pounds from them with the promise of repaying with some interest on top. Then he would go to the foreign exchange market and he would sell those pounds to buy German mark instead. The idea being that when the exchange rate drops, he would be able to buy those pounds back cheaper, earning the difference as profit. On September 16th, George Soros called up any international bank or company or really anyone that had British pounds, and he tried to borrow them with great success. By the time the British woke up, George Soros had already sold 10 billion worth of pounds on the open market. Unsurprisingly, the Bank of England was in complete chaos. The Chancellor of Exchequer began a desperate fight. Britain made a surprise announcement that it was increasing its interest rate by 2%. Which is very big increase considering the fact that Britain was already in recession. And in recession, countries usually decrease interest rate, not the other way around. By the end of September 16th, Britain had purchased 27 billion pounds and had increased its interest rates to 15%. But just George Soros alone had sold about half as many pounds. And by that point, the entire world was following suit in selling the pound. Finally, at 7:30 p.m., the British government accepted its defeat by announcing that
Britain's best interests are served by suspending our membership of the exchange rate mechanism.
When the pound was withdrawn from the ERM, its value dropped dramatically. And so George Soros and other investors who had bet against the currency made large profits. This event is widely considered as breaking the Bank of England, as it was the first time a central bank had to withdraw a currency from the exchange rate mechanism. Furthermore, George Soros and other investors' action was not illegal. They were just taking advantage of the opportunity presented by an overvalued currency.